Today we'll be talking about why the Digital Nomad Visa offered at one of the world's hottest tourist destinations actually isn't a great option for many digital nomads. We'll be talking about Japan, a country that has become a leading destination for global tourism over the past decade, and especially after the pandemic, and we'll break down the country's Nomad Visa to see whether it's right for you or not, and in most cases it probably isn't. If you've been following the global mobility space, you probably saw the massive headlines in April of 2024 that Japan was finally launching a digital nomad visa. On paper, it seemed like a dream for many people. You could pack up your laptop, move to Tokyo or Kyoto, and work remotely while soaking in one of the world's most fascinating cultures. But before you try to pursue this, we should have a serious talk about what's actually going on the ground in Japan and what you're likely to encounter if you try to pursue this visa. For starters, Japan's Nomad Visa is not easily accessible. The visa is a highly controlled, risk-averse policy designed to just simply inject foreign capital into the economy without granting you actual residency. So if you do obtain the visa, you're basically treated like a glorified tourist with slightly more rights and accessibility, although those don't go very far, which we'll cover. The classification triggers a cascade of different systemic nightmares, ranging from issues accessing housing to massive hidden tax traps. So let's break down exactly what the visa is, what it demands of you, and the severe bureaucratic friction you're likely to encounter if you pursue this visa. First, let's talk about what the visa actually offers. Categorized under the designated activity status, the visa allows you to live in Japan for up to 6 months and only 6 months with no possibility to extend. That alone makes it one of the weakest visas globally in terms of duration, and during that time you can only provide services to clients or employers that are located entirely outside of Japan. On top of that, the eligibility criteria are intentionally stringent. First of all, your passport matters a lot, and you must be a citizen of one of 49 specific countries that have both a visa exemption agreement and a bilateral tax treaty with Japan. This means places like the UK, the US, Australia, and most of the EU would be eligible. However, for comparative purposes, the Republic of Georgia offers a 1-year visa on arrival to citizens of 95 countries. Even if you're a citizen of one of these 49 countries, then comes the next hurdle, which is the income threshold. You must provide an annual gross income of at least 10 million Japanese yen, which is currently just under 64,000 US dollars. This is not exactly a nomad-friendly amount if you're making a few $1,000s online or if you're making passive income each month. And speaking of passive income, immigration wants to see consecutive pay slips, tax statements, and active client contracts. On top of that, because you're excluded from Japan's healthcare system, you have to buy comprehensive health insurance that covers death, illness, and injury for a minimum of 10 million yen. This alone can cause headaches, and many visa applications have been rejected because standard travel insurance is often too vague to deem it eligible. If you clear these financial hurdles, you then enter a bureaucratic maze. To apply for the visa, you have to submit an exhaustive activity plan that requires you to meticulously outline your intended weekly schedule, balancing your remote work hours with specific cultural sightseeing activities. If your itinerary looks like you're just going to sit in a room and work 80 hours a week without engaging in Japanese tourism, you risk heavy scrutiny or outright rejection. The process itself is wildly inconsistent. If you apply directly at an overseas embassy, they have to physically refer your paperwork back to Tokyo, which can lead to delays stretching into months. Some consulates like New York have seen massive rejections over tiny infractions like a photos being slightly off or slightly incorrect information on the form. And yes, you do need to submit a photo and a physical form to apply. There have even been reports of consular staff telling applicants from the US and UK to just skip the paperwork, enter as a tourist, and work quietly on a 90-day waiver. Keep in mind, however, that doing this is technically a violation of immigration law that could risk deportation, but this is not uncommon in Japan. When I first moved to Kyushu maybe 10 years ago, this is exactly what happened to me. I needed a proof of address to get a residence certificate, but to get a residence certificate you needed an address, and since I just moved to Japan, I obviously didn't have an address. The staff I was working with at the city hall or city office, wherever I was, after calling a bunch of people, eventually just told me to lie. So that's kind of the bureaucracy you'll be dealing with if you pursue this visa. And on top of that, if you want to leave Japan for a weekend trip to Seoul or Taipei or Hong Kong or any of the other places in the region, you should be careful because the visa is only single entry. If you leave the country without first spending a day at immigration to get a proper re-entry permit, your digital nomad visa can be instantly and permanently voided. There is also a catastrophic tax trap with this visa that many people don't think about. Because you're in Japan for less than a year, you're generally shielded from domestic income tax on your foreign earnings. However, there's a massive legal hazard waiting for some people, which is the 183-day tax rule. You're only exempt from foreign income tax if you stay less than 183 days in a 12-month period. The Digital Nomad Visa is granted for exactly 6 months, but if you max that out and then come back to Japan as a tourist within that period, the treaty protection can collapse. You suddenly become retroactively liable for Japanese income tax and all the money you earned during the entire stay in the country. Thus, if you do plan to stay in Japan on this visa, you need to meticulously count your days and make sure you do not cross this 183-day threshold. And even if you do get the visa, life on the ground is not all that great. You're either a short-term tourist or a legally registered resident. Registered residents get a proper residence card, which is the foundation for their daily lives. As someone on a digital nomad visa, you do not get one of these cards. So if you try to do anything within the country, you're going to hit an invisible paperwork wall because you're locked out of the standard, reasonably priced housing market, as well as accessing SIM cards and cell phones. First of all, in terms of housing, any sort of reasonably priced housing will be off limits to you because landlords and domestic companies will reject you outright. You're thus forced into a secondary market, which can easily cost upwards of $2,000 a month. There are a growing number of companies that offer housing to long-term tourists, but these are also hyperinflated and somewhat in a gray legal area. In addition to housing, you can also not get a standard domestic phone plan with the Japanese voice number due to strict telecommunication laws. You'll thus be relying on eSIMs, and sometimes you won't even be able to call Japanese numbers because you don't have a Japanese number yourself. And you could forget about opening a bank account without a residence card. You're entirely reliant on international fintech apps like Wise or Revolt and convenience store ATMs. So that's what life is like in Japan under the Digital Nomad Visa. Japan is a safe country, the infrastructure is world-class, and the country is full of rich cultural heritage, with each city offering something unique to tourists. However, Japan's Digital Nomad Visa really only makes sense if you absolutely want or need to be in Japan for 6 months for personal reasons. There also isn't much of a nomad community in Japan, and expat communities can be very hit or miss depending on where you are. If you're willing to navigate this system through purely international workarounds, such as accepting the inflated rent you're going to pay, the single entry stress, and acting like a wealthy ghost in Japan's system, and you have a reasonable reason to be in the country, it may be an interesting experience if you meet the requirements and are willing to deal with the administrative headaches you're going to encounter. But if you're looking for a proper base, a place that will let you network with others and build a proper network and not be bogged down administratively, Japan's visa is definitely not right for you. Southeast Asian options like Thailand's Digital Thailand Visa are much more competitive, more accessible, easier to obtain, and the cost of living will be much lower. You'll also have a proper nomad community to be a part of. Even South Korea offers a better option here, as Korea offers up to a 2-year stay. So that concludes our video on Japan. We hope you found this video grounding and informative, and we hope it will inform your decision as to whether a Japan Digital Nomad Visa is right for you or not. Let us know in the comments section if you plan to pursue this visa or if you have any questions.